are special. They're fragile. They are stored in a special way. If you get mushrooms at a farmer's market, you want to store them in a paper bag in the refrigerator until you use them. Right here I have some Shiitake and Maitake mushrooms, which are known for their woody flavor. These are the Maitake mushrooms, which are extremely delicate. They have a feathery texture, and these are the Shiitake mushrooms. And you can eat the stem too, and what I do is I cut off this part here because it's a little tougher. So today we're going to be cooking these. I have 2 heavy skillets going because it's really important that your mushrooms have space. They don't like to be crowded. And the idea is with the heat, there's something called the Maillard effect, which is when the sugars and the amino acids interact. They create this sort of caramelization, and they really bring out the woody, nutty, earthy flavor of the mushrooms. But before we do anything, it's important to clean your mushrooms. Never wash your mushrooms. A little brush like this, which I use for egg wash when I make pies, you could just brush off the mushrooms like this. If you get your mushrooms from a mushroom farmer, they're usually pretty clean to begin with. Any excess water on your mushroom will create a soggy situation, and then the mushrooms will not hold the same amount of flavor. So the skillets are sizzling hot, and I have here the Shiitake mushrooms. They're going to go in this skillet. And they have plenty of space. And the idea is to let them sit a little bit and to not move them around too much in the beginning. The Maitake mushrooms are a little more fragile, and you just sort of gently separate them. Again, give them plenty of space in the skillet so they can, I like to think of it as they can appreciate the sizzling and soak in just a little bit of butter. And some natural liquid will occur because the mushrooms have some water in them, just naturally. So these are on sort of medium to high heat, and we're going to let them set for a minute. The extras here go into my puppy's sandbox because my dog actually is a Lagotto Romagnolo, which is a northern Italian water dog, and they are trained to hunt for truffles. So when I put the mushroom remnants in his sandbox, she really loves them. So I'm going to use that for her joy. I have this nice wooden spoon here, and I'll just sort of gently move them a little bit to make sure nothing's getting burned. Once these have cooked for a little bit, I'm going to add a layer of salt, and this is kosher salt, just a little layer. I like to layer salt, so I put just a little bit on several times during the cooking process, and it helps make the flavor a little bit more complex. So the mushrooms have seared nicely. There's a little bit of smoke happening because I don't use olive oil with mushrooms. I like to work with butter a little bit more. And this large skillet tends to get hotter faster than the Le Creuset. But we have both of the mushrooms are all ready, so I'm going to let them cool down here. And meanwhile, I'm going to go to the garden and get some of the cherry tomatoes because we're going to combine the cherry tomatoes with the mushrooms over a rice noodle pasta to make something really nice and light for the summertime. So come on to the backyard and I'll show you my tomatoes. And anybody can have a tomato garden. All you need is a pot. Back here behind my fig bush, I have a big pot, and right here are my cherry tomatoes. And all you need to do is to start with a small plant in the spring and put them in a nice, heavy, big plastic pot, and before you know it, you'll have an abundance of delicious cherry tomatoes. And I love the smell of a fresh tomato vine. There's something really sort of almost spicy and earthy at the same time. I don't want to have too many because tomatoes can overpower the mushrooms, but just enough to add a little bit of color. And I have 2 of these pots, so I have plenty of tomatoes. The ones over here are red instead of the yellow, so I'm going to take some of those also, just because I like to have a variety of color. So here we go. So my puppy sandbox isn't really a sandbox, it's a digging station, and that's the exciting thing, is when I get to add to it. So these mushrooms are going to go right in here. This is her digging station, and I found this wonderful root. It was in somebody's trash. I put it in here and she just loves this. So this is her spot. She's got some mushrooms, some sticks. Here you go, Phoebes. And this is where she likes to play. So after the mushrooms have cooled down a little bit, a really great trick is to take your mushrooms and to let them dry, cool down fully, and sort of air dry just a little bit on a cookie. It's like a baking rack for cooling, for cakes and cookies, but it's great for mushrooms. And the reason why I put it on this cooling rack is because if you were to put the mushrooms, which are very delicate, if you were to put them on a paper towel, it might absorb some of the paper towel fibers. And the idea is, you want to, since this is not part of a sauce, I want to make sure that the texture of the mushrooms is something that you can appreciate when it's combined with this rice noodle pasta. I'm also going to add a little bit of thyme, which is sort of a subtle herb. Nothing too strong like basil or anything like that, because I want the woodiness of the mushrooms to be the feature of the dinner. So that's it. It's going to be fun to have some people over and enjoy this summertime meal. And the best thing is it can be served at room temperature.